Picture the scene. The date is August 23, 1595. A scorching sun beats down on the marshes south of Bucharest. The air is thick with humidity and the drone of insects, but soon it will be filled with something else entirely. The screams of men drowning in armor. You are standing on the banks of the Neajlov River. To the south, the horizon is darkened by a gathering storm, not of clouds, but of dust. It is the army of Islam, led by the Grand Vizier Sinan Pasha, 100,000 men. Janissaries, sipahis, cannons that can shatter city walls. A force so massive it feels like a force of nature. Opposing them, standing in the mud with their backs to the forest, are just 16,000 Wallachians. They are led by a man who has already been condemned to death by the Sultan. A man who has dared to stop paying tribute. A man named Michael the Brave. On paper, this battle is already over. It is a mathematical impossibility. But Michael has chosen this ground very carefully. He knows something Sinan Pasha does not. He knows that in the sucking mud of Calugareni, numbers mean nothing. This is the story of how a wooden bridge in a muddy swamp became the graveyard of an empire's ambition. This is the Battle of Călugăreni. To understand the sheer audacity of this moment, we must look at the stakes. In the late 16th century, the Ottoman Empire was at the zenith of its power. The long war had begun, a massive conflict between the Habsburgs and the Ottomans for the soul of Central Europe. Wallachia, a small principality caught between these giants, was expected to bow its head. But Michael was not a man to bow. He had secured the throne by borrowing massive sums of money from creditors in Constantinople, and then, in a move of stunning violence, he summoned those creditors to his palace and slaughtered them. He then attacked the Ottoman garrisons along the Danube. It was a declaration of total war. The Sultan, enraged, sent Koka Sinan Pasha, the conqueror of Yemen and Tunis, a veteran commander in his 80s, to crush this rebellion once and for all. Sinan's objective was not just to defeat Michael. It was to erase Wallachia from the map, to turn it into a direct Ottoman province ruled by a pasha. Michael knew he could not meet the Ottomans in the open field. His army was a ragtag coalition of Wallachian boyars, peasant infantry, and Transylvanian mercenaries. If the Ottoman cavalry, the sipahis, had room to maneuver, the Wallachies would be encircled and butchered in an hour. So, Michael retreated. He pulled back towards the Neajlov River to a place called Calugareni. It was a tactical bottleneck. The river here was surrounded by dense forested swamps. The only way to cross was a single narrow wooden bridge. This bridge is the protagonist of our story. It was the choke point. Michael knew that Sinan Pasha, in his arrogance, would try to force his massive army across it. It was a classic trap, a repetition of Thermopylae, but played out in the mud rather than the rocky passes of Greece. The battle began at dawn. The Ottoman vanguard, eager for glory, surged forward. They expected the Wallachians to break at the sight of them. Instead, they ran into a wall of fire. Michael had positioned his cannons perfectly to sweep the bridge. As the first wave of Ottomans crowded onto the narrow wooden planks, the Wallachian artillery opened up. The effect was gruesome. Cannonballs plowed through the dense mass of men. There was nowhere to run. To the left and right was the deep, sucking marsh. Sinan Pasha, watching from the rear, was furious. He could not bring his numbers to bear. He fed more men into the grinder. Janissaries, the elite shock troops of the Sultan, were ordered forward. They pushed across the bridge over the bodies of their comrades, managing to establish a foothold on the northern bank. For hours, the battle seesawed. The Wallachians fought with the desperation of men protecting their homes. Michael himself was everywhere. The chronicles tell us he fought with a battle axe, personally leading countercharges to push the Ottomans back into the river. At one point, the pressure was so intense that the Wallachian line began to buckle. This was the crisis point. It was midday. The heat was unbearable. The Ottomans had pushed enough men across to threaten Michael's center. If the line broke now, the rebellion died here. Michael did not panic. He looked at his reserves, a small force of Transylvanian knights led by Albert Kirili. And then he did the unthinkable. He didn't just order a charge. He took a battle axe, grabbed the standard, and rode directly into the mass of janissaries. Imagine the sight. The Prince of Wallachia, a man of immense physical strength, crashing into the elite infantry of the Ottoman Empire. His ferocity electrified his men. The Wallachians, seeing their prince risking everything, surged forward with a roar that reportedly drowned out the cannons. At the exact same time, Michael played his hidden card. He had sent a detachment of scouts through the seemingly impassable forest to flank the Ottoman army. Suddenly, out of the tree line on the Ottoman side of the river, cannons began to fire. Panic is a contagion, and in an army of 100,000 squeezed into a swamp, it spreads faster than fire. The Ottomans, thinking they were being encircled by a massive fresh army, broke. The retreat turned into a catastrophe. The bridge, choked with men trying to flee and men trying to advance, became a death trap. In the crush, thousands were pushed off into the marshes. This is where the mud trap claimed its toll. The Ottoman soldiers were wearing heavy chainmail and carrying heavy muskets. When they hit the soft, deep mud of the Neajlov, they didn't just get stuck. They sank. The chronicles describe a scene of absolute horror. Men were trampled by their own cavalry. Horses panicked, thrashing in the slime, dragging their riders down with them. The river turned red. It is said that the Wallachians could walk across the river on the backs of the Ottoman dead without getting their boots wet. In the span of minutes, the Ottoman formation collapsed. Sinan Pasha himself was caught in the rout. The Grand Vizier, the 80-year-old commander of the empire, was thrown from his horse into the swamp. He was saved only by one of his personal guards who dragged him out of the muck, humiliated and covered in slime. The legend says he lost his teeth in the fall. The conqueror of armies, reduced to a muddy, toothless old man fleeing for his life. The aftermath was staggering. While the number 100,000 drowned is a hyperbole of the time, the devastation was real. The Ottoman casualty count was horrific, including 4 pashas and countless elite janissaries. They lost their cannons, their Green Prophet's banner, and their aura of invincibility. Michael the Brave had achieved the impossible. He had stopped the Ottoman steamroller cold. However, we must respect the historical reality. Calugareni was a tactical victory, but a strategic stalemate. Michael simply did not have the manpower to pursue the fleeing Ottomans and destroy them completely. He had to retreat to the mountains to wait for aid from Sigismund Bathory of Transylvania. The Ottomans would regroup and eventually occupy Bucharest for a time, but the psychological damage was done. Calugareni proved that the Ottomans could be beaten. It proved that a small, determined force, using the terrain to their advantage, could humble a superpower. Michael went on to achieve something even greater, the first unification of Wallachia, Moldavia, and Transylvania. For a brief, shining moment, he united the Romanian people under a single crown. But it all started here, in the mud. The Battle of Călugăreni is a masterclass in force multiplication. It teaches us that terrain is not just scenery. It is a weapon. Michael the Brave didn't beat the Ottomans with soldiers. He beat them with a bridge. He turned their greatest strength, their numbers, into their fatal weakness. As we look back at this clash of civilizations, we see the fragility of power. One moment, you are the Grand Vizier commanding the earth to shake. The next, you are fighting for breath in a swamp, defeated by a man with an axe and a plan. If you want to discover more moments where history turned on the edge of a blade, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. We are bringing the past to life, one battle at a time. Until next time.